Hello and welcome to Car Dealer Live. My name is James Batchelor and thank you very much for joining us to these live broadcasts on the Car Dealer Magazine YouTube channel where we talk to people right across the industry. Now on today's show we're talking about auctions, an area of the industry that has kept going through lockdown, albeit rather differently, and it's a subject that has created a lot of debate since the start of lockdown, especially among members of the Car Dealer Magazine Forum. Now, joining us to speak more is Martin Potter, Managing Director, Customer of Aston Barclay, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, but a bit of an industry veteran. Now, he joins me now. Hello, Martin.
Hi, James. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. You don't mind me calling you a bit of an industry veteran, do you?
No, that's fine. I can't get away from the fact I've been in the job over 30 years now, so no, that's fine.
Exactly, and we couldn't talk to anybody more experienced, so it's great to have you on. Can we just start, please? Can you just give us just a quick update on what's going on at Aston Barclay? You know, which sites have opened or whether they've remained closed? Just a bit of a state of play, please.
Yeah, of course. How far? Well, I don't know if you want to go back during COVID or not, but certainly since the 15th of June, when auctions were officially allowed to reopen, every single site, all of our 6 centres were open from the 15th of June, obviously under slightly different conditions because of the social gathering aspects and us not wanting to create unnecessary social gatherings. So we adopted a policy where all retailers and buyers can view stock prior to sale, but all the sales themselves would continue to be on a live basis online as they were during COVID. So yeah, all sites open, obviously not all staff back yet, but the vast majority, so that we're still able to operate and inspect and image and on-site cars. Customers can come to pay and collect and take them away. We've got our full delivery services available as well. So yeah, everything is normal apart from the fact that we haven't got cars physically driving through halls.
Yeah, and is that something you're just you're just monitoring the guidance from the government and you're going to make a decision as and when?
Yeah, I think we're under constant review with it, James, because like I said, we're very conscious that we don't want to be affecting the R rating, and as we're seeing every week, there's new areas that are sort of put under further restrictions, and we don't want to be responsible as a company for creating unnecessary gatherings. I think the buying audience has adapted really well during the COVID period to buying and purchasing online. So yeah, we're monitoring all the time, and we're not saying never say never. I think, in all honesty, any area that we may return to some form of physical attendance might be in the value or budget arena for dealer part exchanges, just purely because the age profile of those cars does often lend itself slightly better to being able to see them drive through, etc. But I think us offering the ability for buyers to view prior to sale gives them the opportunity to come and view the cars, and therefore is even less of a necessity. But yeah, we're constantly reviewing it, but at the moment everything is still online, and I think buyers have found how easy it is to use the online tools, and actually I think a number of organisations have even said they're probably more productive as a result of being able to log on to numerous sales rather than tying a buyer up with one particular centre. So that's where we are at the moment, certainly.
Okay, great. Well, let's just talk about your trading during lockdown. I mean, what was it like being shut down? Obviously, you know, as we all know, and as you were just saying, it was purely online. So what was that like?
Yeah, it was obviously probably an unprecedented time that none of us had experienced before. But I think the business did really well. We sort of heard on the 23rd of July, like everybody, we needed to lock down. We made sure that we spent the next sort of 4 or 5 days getting all of the vehicles that were already in transit back to site, so they were secure for our customers. We also made ourselves available under those certain conditions we had to comply with to make sure buyers could pay and come and take some of the stock away that they purchased. And testament, I think, to the investment we made in technology sort of back in 2018, we were able to actually start trading again, selling cars online from the 3rd of April. So we didn't actually sort of stop trading at all. And I think We had a number of vendors that were keen to still liquidate their assets and keep cash flow moving through their businesses. And as you know, a lot of retailers did have online capabilities, and they too were able to continue to trade, and they needed to purchase new stock to replenish what they'd sold online. So whilst there was a much smaller amount of dealers available and a concise amount of vendors that wanted to trade, there was still certainly enough for us to be putting on those remote auctions, and the technology allowed us to have an auctioneer at their home and a block client at a different home 200 miles away, and still able to run a sequentially lotted auction with full audio and video and full inspections and images. So it was a great test for the technology, and yeah, it's been fantastic to allow us to keep trading and keep customers happy.
So what kind of volumes were you getting through?
Well, actually, we looked at this the other day, and obviously it was very small to start with, as people were obviously learning and concentrating on their own businesses and on how they would trade over that period. But it grew very quickly. Like I say, the first week we probably only offered two to 400 cars over that first week. But very quickly we came to a position within 2 or 3 weeks where we were holding at least 2 online sales a day for 5 days a week, and sometimes even 3. And we ended up, even when some people were closed throughout that whole period, I think we ended up selling well over 12,000 cars during that time, which is sort of still not the levels we would normally see, but much greater than we expected to do when everybody was still shut down.
So obviously we've started to come out of lockdown. You know, you could even say we're totally out of lockdown, but for our industry, it doesn't feel like that at all. So what has the progress been, and what's business been like?
I think we did a number of surveys just before coming out of lockdown, just to get a feel from retailers what they thought post-COVID might look like, for us to also get a feel about appetite for selling, and also get a feel for what was going to be in the market. And I have to say, most people that we surveyed were sort of saying, actually, if I got to maybe 50% of where I was pre-COVID, I think that's probably about as good as we're going to get. And I think, as you probably now know, you know, from the 1st of June when the dealerships opened, I think everybody's been surprised, but also really pleased how the market's gone and how it's bounced back. And I think everybody is reporting either very close to, or actually in lots of cases exceeding pre-COVID sales. And we've certainly seen the same. We've had a couple of record months in terms of the amount of vehicles that have been liquidated. And the demand and prices have been very, very high. In fact, I think they're across all sectors, they're probably at their highest since we've been running our own insight reports since 2017. They're at the highest ever level. And that was certainly to the end of July. And I think August has continued in much the same vein. So it's been very, very healthy. Some people, and I think there was that pent up demand right at the beginning that everybody talked about, where people had not been able to fulfill some of the orders they already had, plus obviously nearly 3 months worth of no trading. But I think we're way past that pent up situation now, and we're actually in a new normal. And yeah, retail has been very good. Even this week, I was speaking to retailers this morning, and they've said how good that retail demand just continues to be. So that's been very welcome, I think, from all of us.
Yeah. Now, during the height of the lockdown, we were hearing that it was cars at the budget end of the sector, even MPVs and even premium high-end sports cars were doing quite well. Did you experience that? And what are you seeing at the moment? Have those trends sort of disappeared a little bit? Are we back to a new normal now?
Yeah, it's difficult to say when the new normal kicks in, James. But I think everything's so fluid at the moment. But yes, I would say every single sector increased. There was, demand certainly outstripped supply for the whole of June and July. Yes, the value end of the market did go up exponentially against everything else. And I think the reason for that was obviously dealers had been closed for some time, therefore they hadn't started to generate the part exchange volume that the auctions see, and therefore there was a major shortage in that value arena. And obviously there was a lot of demand in that area because people were looking for perhaps a cheaper car, that they didn't want to use public transport, they just wanted something that was cheaper to get them around. And yeah, there was a massive supply and demand issue, which always causes prices to rise. And like I say, that was across everything: late and low, fleet, manufacturer, all the three sectors within the part exchange market, the part exchange young, the budget and value. I think what's changed, I think only just recently in the last 7 to 10 days, we've noticed a little softening on that value and budget end of the market. And I think, again, that's only because now that dealers have come back, they've had a much better retail period than they thought. That's generated more part exchanges into the network. And obviously there's more choice. So again, the supply and demand has started to level out. So there's nothing, and I mean softening, because nothing's sort of dropped off a cliff or anything. It literally has just softened, just because the supply and demand's probably now a bit more even than it was back in June or July.
Yeah, yeah. Now, there was a lot of chatter during lockdown of fuel types and, what was considered normal before COVID-19 started to change a little bit during lockdown. What were you seeing in terms of fuel trends?
Yeah, I'm always one of those that's been making sure that we still keep reporting about used diesel prices, because obviously we all see the news on the new registrations and how far that diesel product has fallen. But I think it's important with a lot of leasing finance customers. If you go back as little as sort of a couple of years ago, nearly 67% of all registrations were still diesel. And a lot of those vehicles are still coming off their fleet now and are in a market. So I've always been very keen to make sure that those customers know what those prices are doing in the wholesale market, because actually used diesel prices have held up tremendously well over the last 15, 18 months. They've risen as well as all other products in the last 2 or 3 post-COVID. So there's definitely still a demand for diesel out there from the end user and the consumer. They're still offering value to the customer. Yes, there is more alternative fuel products coming in, but for us, it's still only a very small percentage of the total. And obviously that will change now over the next 18, 24 months, because there'll be more and more EV and hybrid and less diesel as that starts to filter through. And I think the only area that we've seen that's been a little bit sensitive is some of the alternative fuel brands in the late and low area have been a little more difficult to shift, just purely because I think manufacturers are doing some great deals on new in that area. People are able to get grants on that product as well. So when you take into account the offers and the grants, actually that late and low and the new sit almost too close together in terms of pricing. So it's just trying to find its right level. But no, everything, all fuel types, so petrol is up, diesel is up, and EV hybrid is also up across all sectors. So, but again, I think that's mainly just because of the massive demand there's been against the supply in the market.
Yeah, yeah. And I particularly think with diesel, whereas in the past, when people were buying a brand new diesel, perhaps they were being pushed into a diesel when it wasn't quite right for them. Whereas now, if you're buying used, the buyers and the vendors know that the end customer is probably, they want a diesel, don't they? So that's why prices are strong, because perhaps in the used market, the diesels are actually finding their proper buyers now,
Yes.
compared to the new market.
Yes. Yeah, well, the new market's always driven by BIK, isn't it?
Mm.
And yeah, most of the company car drivers don't need to either be in an EV or previously a hybrid in order to make the taxation right for them. But yeah, when you get to the end consumer, then there's a different set of demands from a customer.
Yeah.
They're looking at, value for money, even things like how often I've got to go to the petrol station to fill up, what type of journeys am I doing. And yeah, diesel for a retail consumer is still very viable for them, I think, and a good value product. And I think for a little while as well, obviously the EV product does sit at a slightly different price banding. So actually, when you compare a diesel and a petrol compared to an EV option, actually in certain sectors, obviously they still look quite expensive in comparison to a petrol or diesel. But I think that will change as time goes on, because obviously that will start to level out. As we see now with all the newer EV ranges, they've all got a lot longer range on the batteries, so we get rid of that sort of range anxiety. So it will gradually turn where that becomes more viable for the consumer. But certainly good news for all those leasing companies that have still got quite a number of diesels to come over the next 18 months. I think the diesel market's going to stay strong.
Good. Of course, that's just cars. What about vans? How strong have they been?
Well, vans has just been, cars been strong. Vans have been absolutely off the scale, to be honest. I mean, reporting sort of 113 of cap average up to 143% of cap out. I mean, it's been absolutely amazing. And yes, again, there's obviously a massive demand and a shortage of supply. And I don't think that demand's going to dip off for at least the next 18 months, 2 years. I think that market's scheduled to be very, very buoyant. As we well know, obviously one of the areas that is doing well is that delivery market from everybody purchasing online. And I don't think that's going to go away. So yeah, LCV has been amazing. And also, I think most of our fleet and leasing customers, their portfolios have changed over the last 3 or 4 years, where probably most of the leasing companies, almost 25% of their portfolios are now commercial. So as a result of that, we're going to expand our LCV program on the 7th of September. We're going to be selling at Donington for LCVs. We've already got a very established LCV centre at Leeds and at Westbury. So we'll now have sort of 3 LCV centres, and that's really just as a result of our customers having a greater proportion of commercials to remarket, and us making sure that geographically we've got the right number of sales to accommodate that additional volume that's due to come out over the future years and months.
Yeah, yeah, and of course that delivery sector is right across the board, isn't it? Because you've got the big brands like supermarkets, etc., who perhaps are buying back some old stock to fill delivery slots. But of course, right at the very other end of the market, you've got one-man bands who are perhaps doing internet deliveries for a well-known brand, and so it's not just in one part of the market. It's across the board, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think like everything, COVID has sort of forced that escalation of online confidence. I think, hasn't it? It's certainly done that in our industry, because that's been the only way that you could purchase. People have become very confident very quickly, and I think the same is true of online shopping and the way to purchase items. I think that's going to become the norm, and of course, because of that escalation, then yeah, there's much more demand for delivery to people's homes.
Now, it's not just Aston Barclay; it's of course the car buying group as well.
Yeah.
Just give us an update of what's going on there.
Yeah, well, that's a business obviously we purchased almost 2 years ago. That's going very well. Obviously, the benefit of that during that COVID period was that they're able to sort of go and purchase vehicles that are in short supply. So where there are areas that we haven't got enough volume to satisfy the demand, we've been able to make sure that we've purchased to satisfy demand in those areas. We've again invested in technology through that business to help us to get through more of those leads, and obviously that's resulted in greater purchases and a bigger stake in the market. And we look to continue with all that investment in our digital and technology aspects of our business throughout, both in the remarketing arena and in the car buying group.
Mm-hmm. And you've had a bit of changes as well, because the last time I spoke to you, you weren't managing director of customer, were you?
No, I think like most people, Jane, I mean, my role hasn't necessarily changed that much, but it's certainly I think COVID's given every company an opportunity to have a look at itself during those times. And we looked at what does Aston Barclay stand for, and it's very much always been about that customer focus. It's always been, when we're the largest independent across 2 larger corporates, we have to look at what's different about Aston Barclay. And certainly it was our investment in technology that makes us different over the last couple of years, and we've proved that through COVID, being able to continue trading and helping customers to liquidate using that technology. And therefore it was the right thing to do to sort of restructure and make sure that we've got somebody like myself that's focusing over both sets of our customers. We're quite unique, aren't we? We've got a vendor customer and a buyer customer, both very important to our business. And we run a very shallow management structure, so that actually all of our product developments are based on what the customers actually want. And we talk to those customers a lot about their needs and desires and where we can constantly improve our products, but also where they think the future's going for them, so that we're only developing products that we know customers want, rather than us just thinking what we think the customer wants and we're going to invest in something. It's better to do it knowing exactly what the customers need. So that's what that new strategy and role is for me, is to make sure we've got all of the customers under one umbrella, so that we can focus on growing both aspects of that business and deliver a great service, hopefully.
Yeah. And what are your customers saying to you? Are they saying, look, Martin, look, since March, we've gone purely online. You know, we've quite enjoyed transacting online. We've been able to remain in the dealership. We haven't had to go out of the place and have a whole day trip to go to an auction hall. We've quite liked it. Or are people saying to you, you really need to reopen your auction halls again, and we don't like this new online normal?
Yeah. I think actually we've had an awful lot of support, certainly in, like I've said, in the fleet leasing, in the manufacturer arena, and actually in that part exchange young market where the average values are still sort of 8,500. I think in those three sectors, we've had a lot of support from our vendors, and they're very, very keen almost not to return to a physical environment, because they believe it's much more efficient. They're really pleased that the industry has actually used COVID to move on into the 21st century, really. And I think they're very, very pleased with how that's going. I think the auction houses offer a great facility in terms of very clear inspections, very clear common ground grading, good images, and obviously that type of product generally has got a lot of provenance with it. So it lends itself for buyers to be able to buy online with confidence. Like I say, the only area that I think there may still be, and we are getting a little bit of pressure on, is some of that value product that probably lends itself to some visibility. Like I say, with us, because we're enabling buyers to view at the moment, I think some of that anxiety is lessened. But we're monitoring that situation at the moment. We're very conscious that we don't want to create these extra gatherings, but I can see maybe that might be one area that we start to look at whether there's a need for physical in that arena. But again, it's only relevant to that sort of 12, 15 year and older product that's sort of sub £2,000. You can imagine, James, those are the sorts of things you probably do need to listen to as they're going through and that sort of thing, perhaps. But yeah, certainly the other sectors, I think, are not only very, very supportive, but actually keen for us to continue on that vein.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant, Martin. Thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure to catch up and to hear a little bit more about the auctions market. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you, James. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Martin. So if you'd like to be involved in a Car Dealer Live just like this one, please do get in touch. But until next time, thank you very much indeed, and bye-bye.